Hi, good afternoon. It's me. You didn't recognize me. I come from a different background. My background started in a very, very unadventurous way. I spent 23 years at the Central Bank of Malta, another 20 years at the Malta Financial Services Authority. So pretty on a risk-averse start. However, what I want to highlight is that in my career, I spent about 10 or 15 years licensing institutions, both banks and financial institutions. So that part of my career has come in very useful now, especially when we are looking at startups and coming over to us at Malta Government Venture Capital, whereby we have to analyze the proposals being put to us. So that in a nutshell is my background. So you tell me it's a big change. Yes, it is a big change, but at the end of the day, there are still certain fundamentals which straddle both the traditional side of things, of financing, and the more adventurous side of things. So who are we? Malta Venture Capital is a startup in itself. We have only been created, come to life in March of last year. So basically, we are having similar issues like many of you, be it funding, be it resourcing of staff, whatever, But so we can understand where you are coming from. Today, a year later, we are in a better position to understand some of the issues. We have a 10 million fund. We are sponsored by government, so again, we have to be careful into how we deploy our funds. In fact, part of our risk management exercise is that we have 27 sectors where we can invest, 27 economic sectors where we can invest. So we will not put our eggs in one basket, we will try to diversify. As well, we will fund up to 500,000 of any of the projects which come our way. So again, that is part of our risk management. We also undertake a due diligence on the investor and on the startup themselves. Now, why am I mentioning the investor? Again, as a government entity, we have to be careful because at the end of the day, it is government funds, So when we see startups, we want them to come along to us with an investor already, if not invested, but having an active interest in the company. Why? Because eventually we will shadow that investor. We will invest in the same amount and on the same terms and conditions as that investor. So we have to see, again, part of our analysis is to see that the investor has the knowledge, has the deep pocket, has the background, so that even for the startup itself, that investor can help in the process, in the growth of that startup. Once that investor is accredited, we move on to analyzing the startup, and that is done intentionally so that then we know what the startup is doing. We ask them to submit a business plan, financial and descriptive, so that we will see that the numbers are collaborating the description. Also, we want to see that there's a market, that the startup has its resources, management, all those little things add up to putting the startup in the right framework to enable it to grow. So what we were saying, whether it's the Chamber of SMEs, whether what our colleague here was saying in terms of crowdfunding, all these little bits will come together eventually to form a strong company, a strong startup to make it move over to the future, So whilst we may seem to be strict in our analysis, our intention is not to stop anybody, but to have them grow in an organic manner and in a proper manner. Why? Because at the end of the day, once you grow, if you have the proper foundations, then you will grow into a strong organization. And that is where we hope we will be able to assist. as Malta Venture Capital, we found a niche where we can invest. We invest in equity. Before us, as part of the growth process of the startup, there is Malta Enterprise, who can give grants and loans. We give equity, so we invest equity only, a very niche part of the growth or financing requirements, if we may say so, of the firm. Once it grows, then hopefully there is banks and other financial institutions. And again, Tucker Portal could be one of those institutions whereby they could provide alternative financing besides what we are doing. And again, Matthias explained well what crowdfunding can do, you know. So it is good that there was that explanation, because I think both together there are alternatives how a startup can function. On that note, I think I will rest my case here. You know, any questions, I can pass on my card eventually, you know, and please feel free to contact us. Thank you.